How's it going, guys? My name is Jimmy Champagne, and over the past weekend, I have sunk so many hours into last year The Nightmares closed beta with my friends over at Slash and Cast. Friday the 13th does not look like it's coming back anytime soon, and Dead by Daylight is just getting stale for me at this point, but this game brings a lot of new stuff to the table that makes it a whole lot of fun. It does have some major problems, which we will get into, but I wanted to give you my in-depth impressions of the beta today. So the setup in last year has you playing as 5 different survivors going up against one killer, and everyone is playing in first person. The survivors are trying to complete objectives to escape the map, and the killer is obviously trying to murder them and stop that from happening. The new layer here is that the survivors can choose from 4 different classes: Assault, Medic, Technician, and Scout. You can switch between them at any time during the match, and each class comes with its own special item. Assault starts with a pipe, the Medic has a med kit, the Scout has a motion tracking stun gun, and the Technician has a big toolbox. The smart twist here is that any of the high schoolers can play as any class during a match with a limit of 2 per class. And thankfully, only 1 instance of each character can be on the field in a match, so you won't have 5 clones running around to break immersion. Another big twist here is that survivors can scavenge for scrap, upgrade their weapons and armor, and create new ones to temporarily kill the killer. It makes an awesome risk-reward system where you might want to venture out away from the other survivors to farm for scrap, but that drastically increases the chance of the killer finding and killing you. There are also weapons like baseball bats, hockey sticks, shotguns, smoke bombs, and a fucking incredible looking flamethrower, which can either be crafted or found around the map if you're lucky. Since Jason got caught and Dead by Daylight has been busy scooping up the worst iterations of every other iconic slasher, Elastic Games came up with their own designs for the 3 killers, and they're a little simple, but they get the job done. The slasher uses an axe to brutalize his victims. The strangler has a chain that he can pull in survivors with before clawing them to death, and the giant can punch and throw survivors into walls, basketball nets, and of course the ground. And on top of their basic moves, the killers each have their own strength that's basically a more cinematic and overpowered way to murder survivors. The giant can bust through walls, which is terrifying every time it happens, and the strangler can yank survivors into vents. But my favorite one of these trap abilities is the slasher's. He can fly down through a skylight and bury his axe into an unsuspecting survivor's head, and no matter which end of the attack you're on, it never gets old. I personally like playing as the slasher the best because he's the least jarring to jump back into after rounds and rounds of playing as a survivor. There's no doubt that the strangler is the hardest killer to play as because he's weaker than the other 2 and he uses stealth to pick off survivors one by one. Regardless, there's a cool metagame here where you have to figure out what point of the match is best for each killer, and I think having more maps will add to the nuance of that equation at launch. Last year also gives the survivors objectives like putting gas in a lift, driving it across the East Side High School gym, and climbing a ladder to safety. In the beta, there's only 1 map with 1 objective set, but the game site says at launch there will be 3 maps all located in the East Side High School campus. It's not really clear, but that makes me think that the objectives are tied to the map rather than being randomized. So I think it's good that there will be some variety at launch, since doing the same thing over and over on 1 map would get boring after a while. I'd say the biggest thing that sets last year apart from Friday the 13th and Dead by Daylight is that Elastic did its best to balance the game for both teams. All 3 killers are stronger than an individual or even 2 or 3 survivors in most cases, but when a team of survivors works together, they can do some serious damage on any of the 3 killers, whereas in Friday the 13th, it's near impossible to kill Jason, and in Dead by Daylight, it's not even an option. On the other hand though, after putting in some serious hours, the cracks started to show, and I've come away thinking that the game needs some serious rebalancing. The biggest issue right now is that there are way too many overpowered weapons available for survivors. At any given time, you can have 2 shotguns and a stun gun in play, and if you have a group of skilled survivors, it's really easy to stun lock and kill the killer no matter which one is in play. I played the game for about 6 hours straight on Friday and then again on Saturday, and in that time I ran into issues like clipping into walls and doors, which is common stuff for a beta, but there was also a weird issue that happened from time to time where if I died as a survivor, the following match would start with my camera spawning in where I died, and I'd basically have to have one of my teammates lead me straight to the killer to verbally reset things. Aside from that though, I loved how detailed the map was. It's extremely atmospheric with a constant thunderstorm raging outside the school's windows and dim, creepy lighting that kept me alert and on my toes looking for the killer. I was especially impressed when I found myself alone in the basement and I decided to follow the exit signs along the ceilings, and they actually led me straight to the staircase back to safety. And on my system, which has 32 gigs of RAM, a GTX 1070, and an i5, I was able to pull well over 60 frames per second at both 1080 and 1440p. Another weird layer here is that this game is launching on Discord before moving to Steam after 90 days, and Elastic is launching without dedicated servers, which is super disappointing. I was also worried about how Discord's online servers would perform, but in my experience, the game worked as intended 99% of the time. I personally love Discord, and not only does the built-in invite system work really well, but having access to my servers and direct channels while playing is awesome. As much fun as I had with the beta though, I was extremely disappointed to find a complete lack of any progression system whatsoever. I dug through the game's FAQ and there's no mention of anything in terms of a level system or even cosmetics for either the survivors or the killers, which is a major letdown. I don't care how much fun the gameplay is, if there's nothing to work towards besides a higher spot on the leaderboard, it's gonna get boring a lot quicker than its competitors. And in 2018, I feel like a basic progression and cosmetic system should be a given for any multiplayer only title. There's also some matchmaking issues that straight up need to be figured out before this game launches. So the first one was that we couldn't kick people from our lobby. So during the time that we were waiting for people we invited to join our lobby, other people would join in because they knew some of our Discord names, and then they wouldn't leave. We had to ask them to leave and they wouldn't. So we just thought, let's kick them. You cannot kick them. That is just not right. Also, once we were in the game, we couldn't figure out how to mute other players, and if that feature is in the game, it doesn't work like any other multiplayer game I've ever played, so that's just not right either. You need to be able to mute people, especially in an online multiplayer game where people just want to be dicks. To wrap things up here, I had a ton of fun with Last Year the Nightmare over the weekend, and if Elastic Games can figure out a progression system and squash those bugs that I was talking about, I think they could take the throne for the best multiplayer asymmetrical horror game. Elastic Games hasn't given us a release date yet, and I imagine that's because they're collecting all the bugs that came up during the beta, and they're gonna gauge how long those will take to fix before giving us a firm release date. They're adamant that the game will be out in fall though, so that means we'll have it before December 22nd. Let me know what you think of the video down in the comments below, and whether or not you'll be picking the game up. Anyways guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.